Reid Barker. I'm a middle school teacher. I teach 6th grade social studies. I'm a husband to Lisa and a father to Frank and Blaze.
I'm Lisa Barker, and I am a dental hygienist, and we have been married July made 10 years.
Yeah, so Lisa and I are high school sweethearts. We started dating when we were 17 years old at Naaman Forest High School. We were in a couple of the same classes together. I just started falling for her and finally got brave enough to ask her to be my girlfriend, and the rest is history. We got married in 2012 and just been doing well, rocking and rolling ever since.
Okay, so what was that line that you used for her to be your girlfriend? Like, how did you ask for her phone number?
Yeah, I don't think there was anything smooth. I didn't have much game. I think it was probably at that point just inevitable, and just finally got up the nerve to, it's one of those, like you're going to date, and it's just like you have to get past that awkward actually asking the question.
There you go.
And just get the bravery, but it was out in front of my house, right?
My house.
Oh, your house.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, so that we have been married 12 years. So July of this year, we celebrated 10 years. And for us, life has looked very different than we ever imagined it would when we got married at 24 years old in July 6th of 2012. And I think like most, newlyweds, you think, oh, we'll get married, we're going to buy a house, we'll have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, we have our dream careers. You think you have it all planned out. And for us, a year and a half into marriage, life took a turn and didn't end up looking like we thought it would.
About a year and a half into marriage, Lisa just suddenly got really sick. And one day she was talking about how her stomach, her abdomen was hurting. And so I was like, well, if it's hurting, just don't push on it. Like if it hurts when it pushes, don't push. But we realized very quickly that something a little bit more serious was going on. And so we rushed her to the ER, and they said that she needed to have her gallbladder removed. And after that during that gallbladder removal surgery, they noticed that her liver was basically dying, and that she had blood clots in her liver that were cutting off the blood flow. And she went from seemingly perfectly healthy at 25 years old to within a day in critical condition. And she was care flown from Plano to Baylor, Dallas, and she just was intubated on arrival. And very quickly we went from a seemingly perfect world to being forced to live out our vows at a very early age. And so I learned that her only chance of survival was going to be from a liver transplant from a deceased donor. And so here I am in this whirlwind of, one day we're having fun, eating lunch, eating dinner together, to now I see my wife hooked up to machines that are literally keeping her alive. And I didn't know a lot about organ donation, but the little that I did know, I knew that someone was going to have to lose their life for Lisa to live. And I didn't know how long we really had. And so every organ donation story I'd heard before, it seemed like people were on a waiting list for years. And the doctors came in and basically told us that she was going to be listed at the top of the list. And she had roughly 48 hours to live on the machines without a liver transplant. I just remember, at that hospital, I went into the restroom and I just kind of broke down, sat on the floor and just was crying, and I just started having a conversation with God of just, Lord, like, what are you going to do with this? And it wasn't so much asking, like, why are you doing this? But just needing just to know what his purpose in it, because, she was everything to me, and just seeing how she carried herself and how she lived her life, it just didn't make sense that God would take someone who just reflected the love of Jesus more than anybody I'd known. And so I just remember, just the Holy Spirit speaking to me and just saying, Reid, this is an opportunity for you to live out your faith. You've been talking about me, saying that you believe in me, you believe my word, you believe that, I died on the cross for you, and that everything is for a purpose and a plan for your life. And so I just remember, just walking out of that restroom going, like, no matter what happens, Lord, I know you're going to sustain us. I know you're going to sustain me. And it was just that realization that God loves Lisa more than I could ever imagine. And so it just gave me an extreme inner peace. And also just seeing our community rally around us and seeing the amount of people that showed up at the hospital to encourage me, but also just to be there and support her was huge. And it just validated, everything that I felt about her and what she meant to other people. And it was one of those where I just had a good feeling. I didn't know what the end result was going to be, but I knew that we were going to get through it.
So I got a question, man. Like, what made you record videos for Lisa to see, not knowing if she would even see these videos?
Yeah, the reason I chose to record videos and different messages for her in the hospital was, one, I knew that she wasn't aware of anything that was going on. She went in, had gallbladder surgery, and then everything else was happening while she was intubated. And so I wanted her to, one, have that information and understanding in as real time as I could provide, but then also I wanted to capture for her just my raw emotions, because I didn't know if it would be a month, if it would be 2 months, if it would be a year till she was, if she recovered to where she was capable of understanding the extreme, dire situation. And I was just exhausted. And so it was much easier to just record a video with my eyes half open, half asleep, than it was trying to sit down and write or type something and get my thoughts down. And so definitely really grateful for those videos, though, because there's something beautiful about going back to those moments of where it's just you and God and your thoughts. And so I'm glad that, I was able to capture those for her.
And I think for me, it helped to be able to see him truly living out his vows, right? You hear those situations where, life turns upside down and a spouse doesn't always stay or stick through the really hard. And so for me, it allowed me to be able to see him truly living out in sickness or health. And for us, 25 years old, a year and a half into marriage, he was having to care for me in ways that he shouldn't have had until, we were in our 80s. But to truly, sometimes I think, you can get to where you're going through the rhythm of people saying vows and that part, but it's no, you are given the choice to truly live out in sickness or in health.
Did y'all ever have a conversation beforehand on what y'all wanted to happen if the other person was unconscious and couldn't make decisions for themselves?
Not that I recall. I don't think it ever, you're young, you're thinking, you're going to live a long time, you've got your plans. And so, no, it never, stood out to us that, hey, let's plan our future. If these things ever happen, what should we do?
I think he knew, for me, the fight to live was going to be strong. But I think, too, I also would have, trusted him to make that right decision for me.
Reid, how did that make you feel that you would have to be the one that ultimately made all those decisions?
Yeah. He had to accept the liver and everything, though. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's human nature to always kind of feel that pressure, and I did. I felt that pressure with her of just how am I going to make these decisions? But then again, where our faith comes into play, I just reverted back to at the end of the day, it's God's plan for our life, and I'm not going to be the one that somehow messes up God's plan. And so, but yeah, even with the liver transplant, I was told they'll present you with the circumstance if they have a liver available, and you can either accept or deny that. And I'm sitting there going, well, how am I going to do that? And it's no, God's provided the perfect medical professionals that are going to assist you.
We'll make
and
it
then
clear.
with all the other medical conversations that were taking place with doctors and stuff, I thought it was really important, and I wanted Lisa's mom to be there with me. One, because it is a lot for a 25-year-old, 24-year-old to take on, but two, I wanted her to know that, I value her opinion, and I value her as Lisa's mom, and just because I'm married to her doesn't mean that she's out of the picture. And so I feel we really grew in that sense of all the meetings we were together right next to each other.
What did y'all learn about each other in this situation?
I think for me, through our trial, I just learned his devotedness to me. Not that I had ever questioned it, but I think for a 25-year-old young husband to step into the roles that he had to step into, not only like the grief of knowing like I may lose my wife, what is life going to look like, but taking on, you know, the bills and the responsibility in our life during that time, just how absolutely loyal he was, and knowing that no matter how this ends, if I never walk again, if I reject this liver or whatever happens, like he is there, you know, through thick and thin, through everything. He was there, and just how strong he is, but also he always keeps an eternal perspective. And even now, you know, we could come home and talk about a bad day, or, you know, this happened, or even if we get a flat tire or car trouble, like he always brings it back to that eternal perspective. And I think probably more so because of what we've been through, like, you know, at the end of the day, okay, this really, yes, car broke down, but it's not that big of a deal at the end of the day. You know, it's not going to ruin our day. And always bringing it back to an eternal perspective of, look, we got to keep the end goal in mind. We'll get through this. This is how we're going to do it. But always keeping us centered on Christ.
Yeah, so one thing that I learned about Lisa just through her entire transplant journey was, first, it just validated everything to me that I fell in love with her for, and just her compassion for other people, and just seeing just her instant desire to honor Courtney and her family through this, and just love them well, being the recipient of a gift like that, but just her instantaneous desire to give back with that was huge. And then learn how strong she is. I mean, she has the pain tolerance way above anything I've ever seen before, and just her ability to just continue to push through was really inspiring. And then lastly, I just learned just how just really she suffers well, and suffers well for the cause of Christ, and she always points back to him and looks to glorify God in everything that she does, even when she just really physically is not feeling her best. And so I think it, you know, definitely inspired her just to continue giving to other people. She's the most intentional person I've ever seen, but I think especially like she's used walking through that trial and like health struggles, and she just really seeks out opportunities to be intentional and love others well that are going through different health things. So
we can all admit that Reid pretty much acted like Superman, like he was a superhero during this time. So Lisa, how do you think things would have changed if you seen your husband not be Superman, that he wasn't making the right decisions, that he pretty much froze at a time that you needed him?
Yeah, so I think for me, if he would have been opposite than the superhero man he was during that time, I think it would have been really difficult. I don't know, even with like my recovery, if it would have given me like the hope, you know, like to carry on when, you know, to see him the way he was by my bedside and encouraging me, and we got this, we're a team. If I wouldn't have had that, I honestly don't know if my recovery even would have been as successful as it was, because in those times, you know, even life today, like when he sees that I'm overwhelmed, you know, he'll take that weight off my shoulders, and there's times when he is, and I can take that off, and it really makes you realize like you're a team, you know, and you both have to be committed to, you know, the vows you originally said. And so if he wouldn't have been as intentional and as involved in my care, I don't think our recovery would have been as strong as it was. I think it would have been some hard conversations of telling him like what I need, and you know, how he can serve me and what I would need to get through it.
So Lisa, how are you during Reid's transplant? Were you able to return the favor?
Yeah, so my transplant was 2014, and then in 2018, Reid came home one day, and I had met his friend John before, and he said, John let me know that he's in need of a kidney. He needs a kidney transplant, and he had already had one prior from complications of being in the military, but it was failing and he was going to need a new one. And so he said, I want to see if I'm a match. And, of course, his thought process was, you like seeing the life that you've been given the last 4 years, like what it's done for us, like I want to be able to give that to somebody else. And, it was interesting because as much as I knew like what it had done for me and what it had given us, like to then hear like your healthy husband choosing to go into, a big surgery when he's healthy to do this for someone else. I even found myself a little bit hesitant at first. And then, I just thought about these donor families that them and their loved ones like choose this gift of life, and we know the meaning of it, and we just have to trust, like if God's called him to this, then he's going to provide and take care of him. So I think it was a little different being on the side of living donation, just with, during mine, it was like there was no choice. Like we had to have the surgery. She needs it to live. And then for him, like a healthy man going into, to do this surgery. So I was nervous, but also knew the magnitude of the gift that he was giving to John and his family. And so that gave me a lot of peace during that time. And then also, if anything was to happen, like he was doing what he wanted to be doing to serve other people.
Like after my kidney donation, they do follow-up appointments. Really, it's not anything that you have to like stay on a regimen. There's no medicine or anything. There's a couple of diet restrictions, limiting protein intake and some just healthier lifestyle choices that really we all need to be doing. But again, those minor like inconveniences pale in comparison to just the rewards of getting to give the gift of life to someone else. So for me, it was really a no-brainer, and just God's timing in it was perfect because we were in the adoption process, but we hadn't been matched yet. And so just seeing his favor and even just how it all aligned was great.
Yeah, I think he was only in the hospital 3 nights, but even during that small, a lot of his was just more like pain management and whatnot, but the fact that he did that for me for much longer than that gave me, an even bigger appreciation for what he went through during that time.
When's the last time you talked to Michael?
So Michael's her donor dad, or John, my recipient?
John.
Okay, John. So I've talked to John, my kidney recipient. We usually touch base probably about every month, at least through text message. We're both big Alabama football fans, and so anytime football season comes around, we're constantly texting each other about the games. And so we were texting last Saturday and just keeping in touch. It's amazing seeing him just doing so well and looking healthy, and then just seeing pictures of him with his kids. And
he's a father of 4 kids and back to living his life. So it's really beautiful to get to see that.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to share it with your friends, family, and on your social media. Let's spread the love and keep the conversation going. Join us on this journey of love and marriageology.